dozen people were killed, and they're now being smeared as racists, like this gentleman here. And I think that's intolerable.
No, I did not.
He clearly knows nothing about Charlie Hebdo.
I just gave you an example.
Nothing about France, nothing about French traditions of free speech. Charlie Hebdo is a left-wing, anti-racist publication. It has lampooned and does lampoon everybody. In recent years, it has taken particular delight in lampooning. Most of the attacks on Charlie Hebdo, the non-physical attacks, have been from the Catholic Church, repeated attempts to criminalise Charlie Hebdo for what it says about the Pope. Marine Le Pen, the far right-wing leader, is one of the main targets of their satire. You don't understand anything.
Welcome to Douglas Murray Speaks, where we showcase the best of Douglas Murray spitting facts and taking names. Watch Douglas as he lays waste to the lies and distortions of a Muslim activist attempting to pin the blame for one of the worst terrorist attacks in living memory on the victims. In 2015, two Muslims stormed the offices of Charlie Hebdo, a satirical French magazine, and shot and murdered 12 journalists in cold blood, all for the crime of publishing cartoons of Muhammad. We'll now see the Muslim activist display his poor grasp of the issue at hand, and Douglas, understandably, showing little patience for such ignorance.
He talks about we should, the news Charlie Hebdo published whatever they wanted. That's rubbish. They were overtly racist towards Muslims. They were always lampooning Arabs and being overtly racist in most of their publications, and it smacks of hypocrisy because they were prepared, in the name of freedom of speech, to sack a journalist who wrote a column that they considered to be anti-Semitic. So how come there's a line there, but when it comes to Muslims, it doesn't matter, take it on the chin. Why are we treated differently from others?
Could I just answer that? There are some people speaking about who have clearly sort of mugged up on Charlie Hebdo in the last couple of days and drawn from this tragedy whatever they like. But you really should know more if you're going to speak about this.
And I have shown more than you about this topic.
You are going to need to know more
before you
smear dead
I'm not sparing. I'm not
but let me
all dead
one thing you may not be aware
ridiculous.
of. One thing you may not be aware of, but it's worth throwing into the discussion, is that there are laws on the continent, particularly to do with anti-Semitism and particularly to do with the Holocaust. And let me just explain, because you may again not know this, but the historical reasons for that. France has historical reasons to be incredibly sensitive of anti-Semitism in particular, because within people's living memory, tens of thousands of Jews were put on the trains and slaughtered.
So we shouldn't be sensitive of Islamophobia?
No, let me explain.
Well, we shouldn't be sensitive of it. There's a secret website called Google. Let me
finish the point I'm making. There are very specific reasons. There are very specific reasons. There are very specific reasons in France and Germany why some of those laws exist.
Back to the video in a sec. As Douglas rightly points out, criticizing Islam and Jewish people are two wholly separate things. One is a set of ideas. The other, an entire race of people. Which raises the question, why is it that Muslims are so quick to cry racism when they also claim that Islam is the one true religion to which every person, no matter their race, must convert? Next, Muslim reform advocate and friend of Douglas, Maajid Nawaz, draws a very clear distinction between religion and race.
Every idea is open to scrutiny. No idea, whether it's a philosophy or a religion, is immune or can be or should be immune from scrutiny. That's different from hate speech.
But would there not have been a very different attitude? Would there not have been a very different attitude to, for example, as there was, anti-Semitic cartoons?
Well,
what's the difference?
That's why I'm making that's why I'm drawing this distinction, because first of all, Jews are a race, and anti-Semitism is stigmatizing a people. I've often said no idea is above scrutiny, and no people are beneath dignity. And if these were racist cartoons, then there's a legitimate conversation to be had about racism. The reason that I said I wasn't offended at the cartoon that you've just highlighted, it was a stick figure of a character called Jesus saying hello to a stick figure of a character called Mo. And the character called Mo said, "How are you doing?" The reason I picked that particular cartoon to say I wasn't offended at that is because it left no other option for people that take the view that this gentleman's taken, except to say that's blasphemy. And what I suspect is that the issue at hand is, there's a separate debate about racial hate speech. The issue at hand is that many vocal, active, kind of communal, self-identifying, politicized Muslims will take an issue with blasphemy per se, and what they don't want is any depiction of the Prophet in any way.
Back to Douglas soon. Maajid is absolutely correct here. The accusation of racism is just a smokescreen for the Muslim extremists' real agenda, to impose their own ideas of blasphemy onto us under threat of death. Are we in the West supposed to cower to and placate Muslims at every turn, even if it goes against our own deeply held ideals of free speech and secularism? After his cry of racism fails, the Muslim activist attempts another diversion, blaming the Charlie Hebdo attack on the West's war on terror. Douglas sees through this immediately and spares his opponent no punches.
Is there any way in which it is acceptable to poke fun at Islam?
If you want to poke fun, no one really cares. But the thing is, this isn't about poking fun.
We're not talking about cartoons. Is there any
Well,
way?
no, hang on. No, this wasn't about poking fun. This case is being painted as a freedom of speech issue, and it's clearly linked to the war on terror. If you look at the cartoon, the killers, what they say, we're part of Al Qaeda. It wasn't a cartoon that riled them up. It was foreign policy and the war on terror.
But let me get back to the main point which you've been trying to divert us from. That's this. What is going on with this is an attempt not to make Islam be treated differently, and not making Charlie Hebdo. It wasn't to treat Islam differently or Muhammad. It was to treat Islam exactly the same way that secular free people have the right to talk about every religion. And this gentleman and others are trying through the front door, some people through the front door with Kalashnikovs and others through the back door with this kind of weasel talk. What they do is try to make one religion free from being able to be criticised, and it must be stopped.
Well, people that are so insensitive are...
We'll be returning to Douglas shortly. Douglas is spot on. Muslims need to get used to the idea that in the West, there are no sacred cows. Every idea is up for debate, scrutiny, and yes, ridicule. Why is it that second-generation Muslims, born in the West, seem more resistant to this attitude than even their parents? And what does this portend for the next generation of Muslims, and the one after that? Finally, Douglas gets straight to the heart of the issue, and what we need to do as citizens of the West to counteract these new forces of intolerance.
You have to remember what's going on here. This is an attempt, a very clear, very bloody attempt, to impose Islamic blasphemy law in France and across Europe. And it has to be stopped. That's why these men did it. That's why the journalists of Charlie Hebdo are dead. An attempt to impose Islamic blasphemy law in Paris. The problem is that unless you have an I am Spartacus, as you say, tactic on it, it's not worth any one individual or any one, well, let's put it this way, no one publication doing it, because, you know, after the Danish cartoons affair, Charlie Hebdo was the only paper in the world, really, that continued to say it is our right as secular French citizens to draw, lampoon, laugh at, write about whatever we want. We're free people in a free society. They were the only ones who held on to that, and obviously on Wednesday morning we know what happened as a result. So any one publication would, I think, undoubtedly put its staff at considerable risk. That's why I've suggested this week, repeated what Ayaan Hirsi Ali said after the Danish cartoons affair. We have to spread the risk around. The free press in the free world has to spread the risk around. Our freedoms hang on this. It cannot be left to a single individual or a single publication, a single satirical magazine, to hold the line for all of our freedoms.
Stand together we must. Islam gets its power from community. And yet, in most Western countries, the average citizen is atomized and powerless to stand up to this threat. Can we in the West reclaim our sense of community and fight for our ideals? Or are we doomed to be overtaken by a new religion, one that knows no compromise and has only one end in mind: the total Islamization of the world? If you enjoyed this look into the mind of Douglas Murray, please hit the like button. Give us your thoughts on the issues discussed in this video in the comments. And for more Murray content coming soon, don't forget to subscribe.